大家好，欢迎大家来到国际培训大咖五十谈，我是顾立民。上一期呢，我们访谈了 Dr. Ronald Jacobs 罗纳德雅各布斯教授，他是伊利诺伊大学的人力资源开发教授。那么在访谈当中呢，我们围绕着 SOJT 结构化在岗培训。询问了他很多的问题，包括结构化在岗培训有哪些部分组成，在什么时候应用，以及在什么时候实施的，在什么时候实施的时候，应该注意哪些关键点，以及人力资源开发或者叫人力资源发展与人力资源管理这两方面的区别等等。感谢雅各布斯教授。那么本期我们又非常荣幸的请到了国际著名的人力资源方面的教授，他的名字叫 Dr. Jeanne Anderson。Jeanne Anderson 教授呢，是我在美国上学的时候的教授。那么他是在 ISD 人力资源，在这个 ISD 叫教学系统设计e-learning 电子化学习以及绩效改进 performance improvement 方面都非常有成就的这么一位教授。他刚刚退休2-3年的时间，那么现在呢还在教书特别是在疫情期间呢，已经开始呢在网上教书。那么今天呢，我们就这几方面向他来请教 ISD 对他来讲，他的原生定义是什么样子的，如何变成一个真正的课程设计师，以及电子化学习，特别是如何在组织变革中培训如何在组织变革中起到作用，特别是如何让组织变革更加的有效，通过什么方法。另外呢，本期将采取了另外一种形式，最后呢将有一位神秘嘉宾出现，来跟我们的安德森教授呢进行沟通，进行互动，让我们期待。下面我们有请 Jeanne Anderson 教授。Hi, Jeanne, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, George?
I'm good. And I must call you my dear professor.
And you are my student.
Yeah, because you were my professor when I was acquiring my master's degree in the United States in the 90s.
A while ago.
That was more than 20 years ago. Anyway, yep. I'm so glad to see you on the screen. And I'm so glad, and also thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be on the Training Master Series.
And thank you for inviting me, George.
You bet. It's always a pleasure. And I can see that you are in the attic or somewhere. I mean, you have very unique background. It's kind of a rooftop, and is that a log home? Is that your home or
cabin? Yep.
Oh, it's a cabin. So where are you right now?
In northern Wisconsin.
Great. So it's a great hideout. So it's not your home, but your home.
Oh, no, it is my home now.
It is your home now.
I said, why do I need two homes this far north? So I just moved to my favorite place.
Great. And especially during the pandemic, there's probably no better other places than this one.
Well, in the winter, I think there are better places. It's a lot of snow here. It's about the same longitude, latitude. It's just farther east. That's it. Yep. Than Minnesota. But because I have two Great Lakes surrounding me, it does affect the weather. So it's pretty chilly in the winter.
That's a gift. So, yeah. Jeanne, for our audiences, would you please, first of all, introduce yourself a little bit, tell us where you grew up, where you went to college, what you studied, and tell us where you live and work now.
All right. I grew up in Illinois, in a northern suburb of Chicago, and I went to college at Northern Illinois University. I began studying the visual arts, and then for my doctorate, I studied instructional technology. I worked in the Chicago area, designing technical training, beginning at AT&T, and then I moved to Minnesota after a number of years and taught there for 25 years. And after retirement, I moved to northern Wisconsin, where I've been writing and doing volunteer work and that kind of thing. Some
Great.
some teaching, on an adjunct basis.
You bet, you bet. And from your work history, I saw that you in your early years, one of your experience was working for AT&T. Was that right?
Yes.
And what did you do there?
I was an instructional designer. Yep, doing ISD.
You bet.
AT&T had its own model, and it covered everything. Probably the most valuable thing I learned there was coping with constraints, because there's always constraints.
The big company syndrome.
Yes. Well, big companies have deep pockets, but they also have a lot of constraints, like regulations by the government.
Oh yeah, the FCC.
Yep.
The FCC. Yeah, in 1980, AT&T had a divestiture, and it broke up into three. Let's just give our viewers a little bit of background. And since then, there's like Lucent Technology and AT&T Lab, and so on and so forth. And AT&T mother company, Mother Bell, was the Ma Bell still there.
How about?
Oh yeah, the Ma Bell. I worked for one of the baby bells, remember?
Yeah.
I worked for US West and then Quest, and now CenturyLink. So we have the little bit linkage there.
Yeah.
In the bell system.
Yep.
Yep, the Ma Bell and baby bells. The
Well,
Arbor.
I actually worked before I went to AT&T. I worked at Western Electric at their prototype factory, and then I went to back to graduate school. And when I came back, the subject matter that I had been working on at Western Electric was then what I was designing training for. So I had some deep background.
Great. Jeannie, I'm going to move quickly into questions about, first of all, a cluster of questions about ISD. You taught ISD, you taught e-learning, and I'm going to ask about e-learning later. But first of all, ISD, instructional system design. In your opinion, there are so many ISD models. Which one do you think you have taught so many years of several decades, and which one is the most efficient and applicable, both methodologically viable and pragmatically efficient for business?
That's there's no straightforward answer to that. I began designing training in the 1980s using a model designed by Briggs and Gagne. And then as my career progressed, more models were developed, such as Meyer's Principles for the Design of Multimedia Learning, which came out after you graduated.
Yep.
I adapted my practice to use parts of these models that made business sense, and also incorporating newly discovered brain science findings about how people learn. And that gave me some really good insights into designing instruction. I think many models are practical, but novice instructional designers often begin with the ADDIE model because it's easy to remember and to use.
Exactly. I didn't, my first experience when I was at school, Dr. Dennis Fields, and taught us instructional system design, the dig and carry model. The dig and carry model, yeah, water dig and low carry. So as a matter of fact, I'm in contact with Dr. Walter Dick right now, and trying to convince him to be on our show. He's such a modest person. And his system model, approach, what I found out is it truly works. I mean, at that time I did internship, at the library at the LTSC Center. And so it was very applicable. But all these models, like later on, I learned ADDIE model, ADDIE model, and there's Cascade model, there are Assure model, there are like the Camp model, David Camp model, and Waterfall, Spiral model,
Yeah.
you name it. I mean, each one of them probably are different for different usage and applications.
And sometimes you can combine parts of them depending on what your unique situation is. So for instance, I was working on a project with a company that designed and manufactured auto parts, and they used just-in-time training, but it used a lot of multimedia. And so parts of the Myers model applied there along with Dick and Carey. And I know that the Dick and Carey model was used. All of us at State used the Dick and Carey model, and the person that was working there as, I was a consultant, but he was the project manager, I guess you would call him, went through our program. And so I know he was using the Dick and Carey model in addition to that.
Right. Our first textbook, and later on was Smith and Reagan, and that was for instructional system design too, phase 2. So let me just dig a little bit on that question. The AT&T model, you said you were while you were working with AT&T, and they had their own model. They adapted from somewhere. And how does it look? I mean, if you can describe a little bit for us.
It looked a lot like Dick and Carey. It was very similar. As a matter of fact, they often hired consultants like Dick and Carey or Smith and Reagan. And so it could very well have begun with Dick and Carey.
You have so much for the models, and because the reason I'm asking is because different schools use different textbooks for different models, but all at the very end they all come down, like funnel down together to like one basic general ADDIE, and then they call it it is the model of the models and something like that. So there must be one generalized process for all the design.
There really is. I think that there are some things that are missing from some of the models, like the Assure model or the ADDIE model. I think that Briggs and Kanye and Dick and Carey were probably more complete than either of those. And so that's one of the reasons that we decided to use that at State when we were teaching.
So if I may, Jeanne, the message that we have for our viewers, so for the young generations of instructional designers or training professionals, is that you can learn any model you want, and then you can also adapt or adopt any model, and then adapt it into your own purposes, as long as it works for your workplace.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Yeah, you don't have to be very kind of hold that as a doctrine or something like that. Just abide by it, in a strict sense, and then, that model didn't say that, but my work does need that step, and do I add it to it, or that violate that model? There's nothing that will say, nobody will jump out and tell you that you violated some model, but your boss will come out and say, you didn't achieve the results that I wanted.
Actually, I think that one of the big keys to being a really good instructional designer is being aware of the mission and strategies of your organization, so that training programs developed will enhance the performance of the employees, the productivity and competitiveness of the business.
Yep, absolutely.
It's not sufficient to know your model. You need to know your business as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So we cannot learn model and use model for model's sake.
The other thing I would say is keep up with the field.
Right.
Keep up with the research findings, with the psychology of learning, with the new models that are coming out, especially when you're moving into e-learning.
Great, Jeannie. So what next question is, we talk about a lot about the models, and all those models are the for this are for the purpose of the instructional designers usage. So to become, you have been teaching for several decades at universities. So you have trained a lot of instructional designers, and I want to hear from you, from your point of view, from your perspective, what are the key challenges in becoming a true instructional designer? From
Uh,
both academia or from the
I think
application?
that a
Either
true
way.
instructional designer does keep up with the field, with research, with the new models coming out, attends conferences in order to do that, or meetings, whether they're virtual or otherwise, and also understanding the business and the industry that you're part of. Almost all of the training that I did, there was mostly technical training, although I did some management training. So yeah, keeping up with the field.
Mm-hmm. And also application part also, right?
Oh, absolutely. Applying what you've learned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you have taught e-learning. I mean, first of all, I want to ask a question is, what courses, you are retired. I know
Yeah.
that you're retired like 3 or 4 years ago, but you're still teaching. And what courses are you teaching now?
There are some seminars that cover various topics in, you know, the different technologies that are available to use for e-learning, even for classroom learning, technologies for classroom learning. So I've been doing those kinds of things.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say that's mostly it. There are others that I preferred, but I haven't taught them lately. So I'll just stick with that answer.
Well, that's actually moves into my next is a naturally moves into my next question. You have taught e-learning for so many years. Yeah. Is there a best way, there's at organizations there, we're always looking at systems, training systems, and how do we, set up this training system, curriculum, course roadmap, and so on and so forth. So especially in China, because we're a fast growing economy and there are so many training managers and professionals, they want to have multiple systems to be combined with online learning, combined with a concept of knowledge management, and also, most importantly, a couple of years ago, EPSS was introduced into China, and suddenly it became very popular too. And also, just now you also mentioned, it's also in my question, JITT, just-in-time training that you said one company was doing. So, do you think there's a best way to integrate them, to create synergy and to deliver competent?
I don't think there is the best way.
You do or you don't?
I don't think there is one best way. I think that it depends on the organization and its people and
Right.
the topic that you are training on.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that technical training project that used just-in-time training, and it used a lot of video.
Mm-hmm.
That was originally taught as the subject matter experts were from the Netherlands, and they came to the United States and they taught for a week in the classroom, and then everybody would go back to their machines, and it would be difficult for them to remember. So that's why we went to a just-in-time training model and put the training on each machine. Now, there was other aspects of PSS on there. There was reference materials, for instance. So you had your choices. Do you just want to look at the reference, job aid kind of thing, or do you want to look at the videos and watch the process being conducted again? It depends on how long people have been away from that particular machine as well. uh, the longer you're away from a machine, the more likely you are to forget. So it depends entirely on the project, the people, the topics, and so forth. Now, there may come a time where you find some really perfect system, but it hasn't happened yet. That every need is unique, and so people end up combining what they need from various systems.
Just on
It's
the
actually a wonderfully creative time in training to be working. So it doesn't really bother me. Some people don't like the constant change in technology, but I really find it interesting. It's never a boring field.
technology, I know that your interest of research for all these years.
That's right. One of the things that I taught as well. So I'm very interested in research.
In terms of JITT, just-in-time training, what do you think it is biggest characteristic or most useful feature for organizations?
The most useful feature for just-in-time training?
Yep.
Oh, that's really an interesting question. I think one of the most useful feature is that the people can get both an overview and then they can learn in small chunks and then apply it. And so that it's reinforced by that application.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something you can't do generally in a classroom situation.
Right. As I see it, JITT, I'm very interested into it because in fast developing economies like China, like some Eastern Asian countries, well, JITT probably is the future because right now, micro learning is so popular in China. Every company is doing micro learning, micro course, micro this, micro that, and segmentation and bits and pieces here and there. So that is because
that's more the way people really learn. So I think that's very appropriate.
Right, because everything's moving so fast. We're in the VUCA time. We use VUCA time. So nothing is certain anymore, seems like. But organization growth and management does have its own regularities. Does have its own growth path. And people cannot rely on snacks to grow up. They have to rely on the main course to grow up. And people cannot, get their PhD by watching TVs or cartoons. They have to go and climb the ladder for like 18 years, 20 years to get their PhDs. So there is a main system as I see it. And those main system I call it the formal learning, the good old, the good old traditional classroom, instructor-led training, and now partially it's online. But JITT really comes in between EPSS and the good old training. The old system of training in between is JITT because EPSS hosts most of them are information and the training system are all knowledge. And JITT, it's a combination, it's a blender of both information and knowledge. And JITT, the feature is because it's just in time, because you can just use it right on the spot as much as you need it, just the right amount at the right time for the right person and to get the right results. And then after you learned it and applied it, and you can go away or stay on it, spend a few more minutes to learn it, to convert into from short-term memory into long-term memory. And then it becomes your own knowledge. And then that saves time for the main chunks from the good old training system. So it's a perfect combination. So that's why I see that JITT, probably the fast developing economies, is the future. But it won't replace those. It won't replace the EPSS or the good old training system. it's a supplementary. I mean, excuse me, complementary.
One project I was involved in many years ago when I was at AT&T, I worked with the hospitality industry, and it included just-in-time training. It was a combination of just-in-time training with the EPSS. But I agree with you, especially in the case of technical training. It's a natural solution. Now, other kinds of training, for instance, training that is laying down the principles for management. There are a number of other solutions that you might choose to add in as well. Coaching, mentoring, those kinds of things are good additions for teaching people to get ready for their next job, perhaps, if that's management, something like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Those are very like coaching, on the job, mentoring, and some other forms of development is also very, I mean, applicable and reliable at workplaces. That's for sure. I mean, what I've just described, JITT, is just probably one way to build the system, because as I said, there are so many viewers in front of the screen. They're asking, how do I build a system that can meet all kind of requirements? Like, because think, Jeanne, we're in the fast developing economy, fast growing. Every company is growing so fast, and VUCA round and round. And the cell phone is, everybody is on a call, on the call 24/7 probably, and they have to be fast. So that's why micro learning is are so welcoming here. It's probably there's just different economies and different environments, and generates different needs, different level of need.
That's true.
Yeah, probably China is going through what America has been gone through in the 70s or 80s, and probably you can recall and you can tell us that.
But I think because of all the technologies that are available, there are some ways China can leap forward and not have to go through everything that other countries went through. So it's interesting to see what's happening.
Exactly. That's great. That's great. I mean, that really leads my next question. You just said that China can, one possibility is China to catch up to gone through what America or other developing countries have gone through in the past. But the other opportunity, the other possibility is that China may champion all the other countries or other economies, and in some other ways in developing their talents. So my next question is, do you think AI, we're talking about AI,
right?
Blockchain, oh, come on, quantum mechanics. Do you think AI someday will replace human brain learning, because you have been on it and
I think AI has really some important things to give to offer to humans, especially in the case of tasks that are dangerous, boring, repetitious. I don't think it will replace jobs per se. Businesses that use AI strategically will reconfigure those jobs and business processes so that humans are using skills that AI isn't as strong in, social skills, higher order thinking, creativity, and problem solving. Now, that's not to say that they won't get really strong in those areas, but right now, they're not. There was a Forbes magazine article that called that process of reconfiguring jobs job shredding. That was job shredding, and it was by McKendrick back in 2018. I call that job design or re-engineering, re-engineering. And I believe that's what we're going to need to do, is take a look at those jobs and use things that um, humans are best at for the human workers, and AI can be learning those jobs that humans, for instance, I think a lot of job accidents happen when people are doing things so automatically that they're not paying close enough attention. Those kinds of dangerous jobs, I think AI could really help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my thinking about that right now.
Well, that's very very inspiring. Thank you. The other question AI is the future, but we need to get ready for the future. So we need to get ready, and I think the best way to get ready to prepare ourselves for the future is to look at today, what we know and what we don't. I think the best way, as as our Dennis Field always say, the worst thing is they don't know, so let's avoid that. Let's know what we don't, and let's know where the gaps are, and let's catch up. I mean, each one of us.
And there we have to do a lot of analysis. That's to really know what you know. You have to be very self-aware, and you need to continue to monitor what you know.
Mm-hmm. Jeanne, I want to move to next topic is around the performance improvement. I know that you just published a new book called Making Change.
Right.
You got a copy over there?
I do.
Here you go. It's too short. Well, I haven't got the logistics between China, America, I don't know if it's resumed or not. I'll get a copy. But that book, so when was it published and what is it about? Can you tell us a little bit?
Came out in July, and it is about facilitating community change. Now, communities can be in organizations, they can be in your town, your city, they can be in nonprofit organizations. Any time or place where you need to make change, it can be applicable. Now, it's about the facilitating process. That is, for instance, if you are a project manager that is involved in the change to an organization, for instance, maybe you're changing over to new job designs because you have done your job shredding, your reconfiguration to allow AI to be a part of your organization. The person who's leading that needs to involve the people who are going to be applying it. How do you go about doing that? And so it follows the process, the ISD process, but I wrote it for people who are not necessarily ISD people. They may be managers, they may be community members, they may be members or even heads of nonprofit organizations. So nonprofits in the United States right now, as you know, it might have also happened in China, that the pandemic has caused people to be working from home and organizations to be serving from wherever they are to people who are at home. So one of the organizations I've been volunteering with here is it's called a Northern Lakes Discovery Center. And they've been moving from small workshops to online workshops. Well, how can they make it more engaging? So those kinds of things, the leader of the organization is working with their people to make that change.
So you use the word community to refer to all kinds of organizations. So it also applies because in China, majority of us we're talking about businesses. So they apply to businesses as well, right?
Yes. Oh, it can apply to businesses. As a matter of fact, it comes from that model that came out of business. And I put it in simpler language. A lot of what we use in ISD might be called jargon because people aren't familiar with the usage of the words. So I used more everyday words.
Sure. I went online and looked at the table of contents of this book, and I found out that there are 39 chapters.
Yes. Yep.
That's not. There's so many chapters, and so why do you have so many chapters? And instead of dividing them into different chunks or different sections,
well, okay.
and then
there's actually 6 sections.
Stages.
And so if you look at it according to the sections, there may be several chapters in the sections. Each section would be a step in the model. So that makes it a little bit less complicated. So facilitation of planning is one that I think is a particularly important section. That's the actual design of the change. And this aspect of designing is really a lot of which I learned on the job. It wasn't something that I learned in school. It's things like, what happens at those meetings where you're doing planning with a group? Right. Or what can go wrong in those meetings. People sometimes have different perspectives on things. That's both good and bad to oversimplify things, because different perspectives can make for stronger decisions. But if the people butt heads over their different perspectives, they may not get anywhere. They may not make any decisions. So that was probably one of the most important chapters that we put in there.
Stage 4, right?
Pardon?
It is in stage 4, facilitation of planning.
I believe you're right. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, facilitation of planning. And so there's lots of different things that can go wrong and solutions that can help it go right. So that's why there are several different chapters in there.
So this book is more about performance improvement and instructional design and talent development for those non-professionals, right? If you haven't done that before, you're a rookie, and then you can read it and then just apply it. So,
but you can still use a lot of those same practices on in the business. Now, there are some that don't apply. For instance, the chapter called No Tin Cups is about fundraising and stewardship in nonprofits. Right. So that wouldn't apply. But the others, such as building collaboration, is that will apply.
Of course, in translating all the American or Western books, we always encounter at least 1 to 2 chapters that do not apply to Chinese situations, such as copyright issues and copyright IP protection, something like, because the societies are different and the mechanism are different. So we just normally skip that chapter. We know, and what you just described really happened before.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
So you ask about conquering those challenges. I think you can use a lot of different interventions that you're already familiar with: team training, e-learning, coaching, job aids, those kinds of things that ISD persons do know. Nonprofit board members don't necessarily know these things.
Right.
Although many of them are business people, and they do their board membership as a service to the community, and so they may know those things.
Great. Jeanne, today we have a different format. We are going to have a guest of one of our we select one of our audiences that we selected to be on, but that later. And I still have 2 or 3 small questions to ask you before we move into that section. One is right now pandemic, or right now we mentioned that before at the very beginning. So how do you think this pandemic will impact our field?
Well, I think that at least in the United States, a lot of our training was still classroom based. Uh,
Mhm.
and many companies are scrambling to find technologies and methods for educating the fully distributed workforce. And when I say fully distributed, I mean working from home or wherever it is that they're working.
Right.
So I think that's a change to, using technologies for delivering that training.
So technology has been used, like schools nowadays, all the kids, I mean, majority of the kids in schooling age, they are online. So Zoom is very popular. Everybody is Zooming, and we're Zooming right now. So everybody is Zooming in. And so do you think in the future, like maybe 50%, I'm just throw it out there, maybe 50% of all our education will be conducted online, or all most of our organizational training will be conducted online, like up to 50%? Do you think that way?
I, I think that that's a possible number. It's really hard to say. Uh, Interestingly enough, I used to think until the pandemic that graduate students were the best uh, audience, graduate students or professional adults were the best audience for online learning. But now I see, I have granddaughters who are taking online learning, and probably of all 4 of them, the youngest is doing the best. One
The
is in
younger.
college, and she just really doesn't like online learning. She really loves that human contact. She's a real people person. But I keep telling the others that, you know, you're a smart girl, you can do this, and
Right.
they're doing it.
So really will produce some new challenges for organizations. In the past, they had wide range of options, and now they have very few. You have to go online and online and online. There's no probably, especially when the pandemic become very severe, there's no other way out. There's
Right.
only one option, that is online. And
Yep.
then that will produce some organizational or even logistic problems for, I mean, that's naturally uh, brought along by the pandemic, and
You know,
organizations have to face it.
if these people start right now doing online learning at age 10, they're
Right.
going to develop skills that a lot of people my age never developed. Although I started teaching using at least partial online uh, instruction in at the university in 1991. At AT&T before that, we had started doing those kinds of things. So uh, it's developed tremendously since then.
Right. When did you work for for AT&T? Just a makeup question.
84 through 91.
Cool. Yep. Those years are very fast developing, turbulent years for AT&T to grow after the breakup.
Oh, yes. Actually, having worked at Western Electric before that, I saw what it was like at the beginning. Western Electric was a wholly owned subsidiary of AT&T. They manufactured the switching systems,
Mm-hmm.
and they applied the designs of the Bell Labs. And so we were all part of a huge, huge system.
Yep.
So I was actually there earlier in the 80s. I'm not sure what year I started at Western Electric. Maybe it was even in the 70s. I suspect it might have been. I'd have to go look in my resume.
I can download a copy of your resume online.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, thank you so much.
I don't even think it's on there. Honestly, I started that resume just with the barest minimum of my job experience. So I'm not even sure Western Electric's on there.
If you had a chance to start all over again, Jeanne, what would you have done differently?
You know what? I'm not sure I would change anything. Although I started out in a field, the visual arts, that was, you wouldn't think that it would apply, but in fact, it gave me skills and knowledge that I could use to design effective visual messages for teaching. So, that was helpful for many students who were visual learners. And so I guess I wouldn't change that either. It delayed my time to get to the workplace, because when I came to the university for my doctorate, there were some prerequisites I hadn't had because I didn't have a business background. But I did find that it gave me a real strength in an area that not everybody had. So that was useful.
Great. As a last question, and then we'll move into the online guest section. As a closing statement, do you have any advice to the young practitioners in the developing countries, including China?
I absolutely would say that if you can find other professionals in the field, conferences that you can attend, those kinds of things will help you keep up with the research and the developments in the field, but it'll also give you important contacts if you need. It also helps avoid the narrowness of perspective that can sometimes be developed in an organization. So it gives you different perspectives. We used to make a joke at Western Electric that there's the Western way, okay? But it's not the only way. And so you need to have a broader perspective of that.
Right. Great. And Jeanne, today we do have a guest on. The guest is for the Training Master Series, and we are going to invite some of the field practitioners, learning and development practitioners from companies and fast-growing companies in China. And they are going to ask you some questions and some challenges they have met, and hopefully you can give them some answers, and then later on we can still linger on. Right. And then after the session ends, and then we can still keep the contact, and maybe in the future we'll learn more from you. So let me introduce Joseph Tan. Joseph. His Chinese name is Mr. Chen Wanzhong. He's a Singaporean, but he works in China, and very talented. And he's also he's the deputy director of Qilong Entertainment Group. So he is also part of our. Very luckily, he's the first one to be on the show, and very luckily we have him on the Training Master Series production team. And he's one of the lead production designers and multimedia artist. So here you go, Joseph. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, George, for the introduction and for having me on today. And also thanks to Dr. Anderson for sharing your wisdom and insights with us. So I have two questions. The first one is on community building, but in an online setting, which suits the pandemic environment now. Yeah, and the second question will be on visioning. So if it's okay, perhaps I can run them by you one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So question is,
So community building, are you talking about in the business?
right,
Or,
yeah.
oh,
So
okay.
there's background. The question actually is basically what are some of the things that we can do to prevent an online learning community from becoming zombified? And I'm asking this, the background behind this is sometimes within the organization, we have training programs which have an action learning portion after the formal classroom training. So during that 3 to 6 month period, we might add the learners into a online group, like a WhatsApp group, so that we can encourage social learning, right? And at the beginning, people might be a bit hesitant to take part. So sometimes what we have done previously is like in a magic show, and we have members of the audience are planted by us, right?
Oh,
So
fun.
sometimes when we ask, when we pose a question for the learners in the group to participate, we have a side group where some of the more active participants, we pass the question to them in advance, and so they will get the ball rolling within the group, right? So I'm not sure if that's a plausible option and whether it takes away authenticity from the group learning. But if you have any other tips and tricks to try to assist the training department in keeping the learning group alive, I was wondering if you could share them with us. Yeah.
To get to know each other. You know, I take, if I understand your question, you know, how do you get people to begin to build community, especially if they begin in a training class, for instance, where they don't know each other at all? One of the things is you do an opening activity like you're talking about that gets them to interact. I've had several different things that I've used, like for let's see, there's one where you do 3 truths and a lie, and so people would have to guess which of the questions or which of the statements was the lie. And that was always very funny. But the difficult thing with that one was sometimes I would have people from the Middle East, and they had a difficult time with that. So we had to modify the rules so that it was acceptable, because they didn't feel comfortable telling a lie. So there are those kinds of things. There are things that are funny. For instance, Whirlpool, during the height of the AIDS, the factory where they manufactured, I believe it was in Michigan, their washing machines and dryers, and they had a puppet show where there was a duck named Priscilla that lived in the washing machine. And what that did is not only would people strangers to each other, but they also were talking about something that was very difficult for them to talk about. And say, but by using something you would normally associate with children, it removed some of the scariness, if you will, the fear that people felt about the topic. And this duck was a smart aleck woman duck. and for those people in Michigan, that worked. Of course, those things that you use, those openings, need to be culturally appropriate, as we discovered with the 3 truths and a lie. So there are thousands of them online. You can also use those to either energize a group that is fading. You notice the energy in the group is, there's not a lot of energy. you can use those kinds of activities. You can also use them to calm a group that's getting very combative, maybe because you're talking about something that's difficult. You're trying to solve a problem. What I would recommend is, if you use any of those online, is that you customize it for your group. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, if I could, just now a lot of the comments were on perhaps the starting of the group, but let's say we had a group that already had a formal classroom setting, and now they were going into the online environment, so it's a kind of like a blended learning. So you did mention this, right? But are there any other ways we could keep the energy levels up across a period of 3 to 6 months?
One of the things that I do in class, whether it was in the classroom or online, is I would put the students in groups to work on aspects of the instruction. I also never talked more than 20 minutes for an adult. That's more than enough. Before I had them do something that was interactive and hopefully engaging. And that helped keep the energy up also, because then they would have to report back, and we all could learn something that way. So there are many different techniques that we can use to do that. I love the idea of things like magic shows. There was one where people brought a paper bag, and now we were using video, so you could do this on video. A paper bag with different items in there that would help introduce the person. Maybe it was a photograph from a trip, or a ticket to a show, or something that was meaningful to them. And they would maybe have 3 or 4 of those, and they would pull them out and explain what was important. And that was kind of fun too.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Anderson.
May I? Joseph, may I? And also, Jeanne, I just want to remind our audiences that on the second episode of this Training Master series, we interviewed Bob Pike. We have Bob Pike on the show, and his suggestion is right on, Jeanne. I mean, as you said, you don't, in the classroom setting, you don't talk to them more than 20 minutes. Every 4 to 5 minutes he break up to give them and to give the students something to do, and he always engaged them a little bits and pieces, and then keep them engaged all the time.
And the deeper they are, the better that works.
And exactly. And Jeanne, that reminds me what Danny said in the past. He said in one word, he said, "Let them struggle."
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I just want to comment on that. And Joseph, just want to inform Danny is Dr. Dennis Fields. He was my academic advisor for my master's degree in the United States, and he passed away about 5 years ago.
So now I know when you gave me that advice, where it came from. Okay. Great. So yeah, that's I think something that we need to keep in mind, because so often nowadays people just transfer the classroom learning into an online setting and expect it to work, but a lot of times it doesn't. Okay, and so the second question is on visioning, and it's actually a 2-part question. And the first part of the question is simply put, is it for everyone? And the reason I'm asking this is more of a personal question, because I have participated in coaching programs, and they sometimes have an NLP session where they get you to write your problems on a piece of paper. Imagine yourself opening a door, throwing the paper away, and then when you open your eyes, some people have that cathartic release and others don't. So I'm not sure, right? In psychometric tests, I tend to come out as analytical, which is the natural skeptic. So is it something like hypnosis, where some people, it works better with some people more than others. So that's the first question about visioning. And a second question about visioning is it just for positive outcomes? So we usually hear that visioning, is sometimes used for Olympic athletes, where they vision that they are the first place winner, and then they can come in second and third and things like that. So there was once when within the organization, the training department was tasked to participate in the anti-corruption drive within the company. And so, being the training department, right? So we tried to do something, a small workshop in the classroom. And being an attitude kind of training, we didn't want to just tell them what you can do and what you can't do, right? Because that's not going to work. So what we wanted to do was to make the learners feel a tinge of guilt during the whole process. And what we ended up using in the end was the ORID facilitation framework, the objective, reflective, interpretive, and decisional, so that they can kind of connect the negative outcomes of corruption with their own core values. And so the question that I want to ask is, can we use visioning to let the learners imagine what would happen to their life if they got caught doing bad things? Yeah. So the first question is it for everyone? And the second question is it just for positive outcomes? Yeah.
Wow. All right. Give that to me in a single sentence. I need to think about this.
Okay, so the first question is, does visioning work the same way for everybody? Yeah. Or does it work less with some people?
Nothing works for everybody. And so I always recommend using a variety of methods. And it's almost like a cycle, because everybody, I mentioned earlier, some people are visual learners, other people are hands-on learners. Some people learn well through reading. So I try to incorporate all of those at some point in the training. And that's, also true of groups of people in particular organizations, because certain professions attract different kinds of people. And so maybe at the Whirlpool plant, you had more hands-on learners because that was their profession. It attracted that kind of a learner. And so, maybe there are some things that work better for them. Like if I was teaching a group of engineers, one thing I would not use is discovery learning, because often they had a difficult time with that. They didn't like that very much at all. So nothing works for everybody. That's my answer. And so use a variety.
Okay, yeah, great.
That was actually an interesting question. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, and it kind of gave me an answer to something I've been thinking about for a while as well. And so for the second question is visioning, can we use it for negative outcomes as well? So can we let the learner imagine that something bad happens to them to stop them from doing something?
You mentioned visioning. In the book, actually, we have a chapter on visioning. And one of the things that we talked about in there, on each chapter, there's a case study. And one of the examples we gave is that you have a group of people who have, they're very verbal. They got themselves locked into a situation where everybody thought they had the right answer. And the visioning process was stuck. And the facilitator who was my co-author on this book, actually had them do a creative project. And they had difficulty with that because they weren't they didn't feel that they were creative people. They weren't into drawing or painting or writing music or poetry or anything like that. But they were asked to do their visioning using a creative process like that. And what happened was they got a breakthrough. They didn't like the idea of doing it that way, but they were assured that they would get results. They would get their desired results, which is a vision for where they wanted to go with their project, and it worked. So there's several suggestions for visioning in the book, and that's one of those that is applicable to business as well as nonprofits and communities in a larger community. Does that kind of get at one of the things you were talking about?
Well, maybe if I could rephrase the question. So
I just got distracted by that.
No problem. So usually when we think about visioning, it's about where you want to go, right? We vision where we want to end up. And actually my question is, if I want to stop you from doing something, can I let you vision where you don't want to end up? Something like that, yeah.
Where you...
Or how a negative outcome such as going to prison would be a very bad thing.
Yes. Actually, I think the answer to that is yes. I think you can use that, but sometimes you have to do it in different ways for the different audiences. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Actually, I think it could be very effective. If people have an idea what their goal is, they're more likely to get there than if they have no idea where they're going. So, and that's one of the reasons we always tell people what the objectives are for our training, right? At the beginning, so they have an idea of where they're going.
Okay, yeah, great. Because sometimes we have a conversation like those smoking commercials or fasten your seatbelt commercials, and how graphic can the accident be, or the corrupted lungs be before it turns off the user. So yeah, you know, we sometimes have a lot of debate on whether we should use it, but I think what your suggestion is quite apt, which is it really depends on the learner, right?
You know, we don't have smoking commercials here anymore. And so I'm going to speak from my long past, where I remember seeing those. I don't think they were selling smoking. They were selling a lifestyle, you know. It was like, well, I'm going to be glamorous or something like that. I'm going to have more fun. But yeah, there's some things that you just don't want to go too far down that line.
Right.
Anyway, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks so much, Dr. Anderson. So yeah, I think those are my 2 questions for the day.
Those are all your questions?
Yep.
Well, actually, he had another 20 questions, but we're running out of time.
Yep.
Yeah. We have so many questions to tackle on, and but really we have to observe our timeline. And thank you so much, Jeanne. Is such a great opportunity to have you on our master series. And the reason I'm having Joseph on is because we really want to bring you off the screen to our front lines. As you can see right now, Joseph is still in his office, and right now it's 10:20 in the evening. he is still in the office, and that's normal. And tonight is Friday night. He's not here just for this show, but that's normal for them because they're growing fast and the need are absolutely there. And Joseph is very talented. He has a lot of experiences, and he also have a lot of international perspectives, but not everybody in China is like him. And a lot of them are from, maybe graduate from computer science, maybe from advertisement, maybe from law degree, or maybe from, physics. I don't know. And then they end up in the training job. So they know very little about our training profession, not to mention ISD, HPT, EPSS, JIDD, all those jargons we talk about. So, and Joseph has been in this business for a long time. He's a deputy director right now. He has a large team. So as you can see, the gap is absolutely there. And we hope that you can teach one of the courses or in the future and via online. We have machine that to solve the translation problems. Whatever you say will be automatically translated on the screen. So you can open up a Chinese workshop online from Northern Wisconsin and help us to bring up their professional knowledge and skills and help them grow faster, because you have done that for several decades. That's what you're good at.
You know what? That sounds like some of the students that came from China to the United States, but also from other countries. It's not an unusual issue, and I am on LinkedIn and I can be reached that way for questions, discussions. So it would be really interesting to hear from people and have discussions about how they do different things. I really loved some of Joseph's comments about how he designs training.
Yeah. And there, if you want to know more, there in the future, there are a variety of different practices and different trends, adoptions and adaptations of American methodologies and models and principles or even processes and standards into Chinese specific situations, because the two cultures, professionally speaking, everything is the same, but in application, the environment is just the destination environment is different. I mean, the two cultures are basically different. So yeah, there has to be some adaptations. There's a lot of stories, but those are not tonight's topic. But anyway, well, thank you so much, Jeanne, and thank you, Joseph, to be on, and thank you so much. I really look forward to hearing from you more, Jeanne, in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
And be safe and take care.
Bye-bye.
That's my interview with Dr. Jeanne Anderson. During our interview, we covered topics in ISD, instructional system design, in e-learning, and also how to make changes in organizations and what is the most important. And also, we invited one of our chief producers on our team, Mr. Joseph Tan, who is the deputy director of Qilong Group on the training function, to join us to ask some questions that happened at the work. So do you like that format? Please let us know. Thank you, Dr. Jeanne Anderson. Thank you for all your contribution. As one of my professors while I was pursuing my master's degree in the United States, thank you, Jeanne. We have known each other for nearly 30 years, and we hope you well and wish to hearing from you soon. Thank you. Next week, we are going to have the very honor to have another heavyweight on our show. Her name is Dr. Marcy Driscoll. Dr. Marcy Driscoll is a very important figure in the field of instructional system design and learning psychology. She was the Dean of College of Education at Florida State University for 13 years. She just retired a couple years ago, but she's still active. Under her leadership, the College of Education and all the big names that we heard, the legacies carried on successfully till today. We can be here today, and the Florida State University is one of the epic centers of our field, and her contribution cannot be ignored. So during our interview next week, we are going to cover a lot of topics with her, including the psychology of learning about instructional system design, the interdisciplinary factors, essence of instructional system design, and the social essence of ISD. And also during VUCA, how can business train comprehensive talents, and also about her role as a dean at College of Education, how she did it. So until next week, please stay tuned, stay safe. Thank you, and good night.